my dears, and welcome back to my corner of the internet. I'm Shannon, and today I've got another book talk video to share with you guys. And today we are talking about Our Homesick Songs by Emma Hooper. Now, this book was longlisted for the Giller Prize. If you're not familiar, the Giller Prize is the top literary prize in Canada. Towards the end of summer, September-ish, the long list is announced of books who are being considered. Then around October, the short list is narrowed down, and then towards the end of November, I believe, we get the winner. Like I said, top prize in Canada. It's aired on TV, the ceremony. There's a cash prize. The whole ordeal is just wonderful and fun to watch. Plus, I love finding new Canadian authors this way from the long list and the short list. So many amazing books I found and read and have talked about on this channel from those lists. So like I said, this one was longlisted. It didn't make it to the short list, but it's still a fantastic book, and I can't wait to talk about it. Next week we're talking about one that did make it to the short list called An Ocean of Minutes, and I can't wait to talk about that one with you guys. If An Ocean of Minutes isn't the winner, once January rolls around and we're done with Vlogmas, I'll pick up the winner and we'll talk about that one. Our Homesick Songs. This book takes place in Newfoundland, which if you've been around this channel for a while, you know that I am from Newfoundland. And I love reading books that take place there. The culture and the people and just the island in general is so different from any other part of Canada. And I find the people who are from there, they carry a piece of the island in their heart with them wherever they go. And a lot of people have had to leave the island because of what's going to be touched upon in this book. I was watching a YouTuber the other day. His name is John McClane, and he was speaking about islands and leaving home. He's not from Newfoundland or anything like that. He's from Europe. And he said that no one knows true homesickness like someone who leaves an island. And I think that when I heard him say that, it hit me as so profound, and I think that's true. Anyway, let's jump into the story. This book is about a family who lives in a small fishing village. They are called the Connors. Finn and Cora are the children, and their parents are Martha and Aiden. So when we start this book, it is around 1993. And what happened in Newfoundland in 1993 was all the fish disappeared. And that was how so many generations of Newfoundlanders made their livings. They were fishermen. And codfish was the main fish that was caught there. And they were gone. The fish one day were just gone. And eventually a moratorium was put into place to try to bring back the fish population. So what you were left with was an island full of people who could no longer make money the way they had for literally generations. And those people that had been fishermen for so many years, they most generally didn't have, post-secondary educations, because when they were growing up, they knew that they were going to do as their father did and as their grandfather did and their great-grandfather did, and they were going to take to the sea and be fishermen as well. So now you had these people with no education and no way to support their families, and so the only thing that they could do was leave. And they went out west to Western Canada, to Alberta mostly, which is where I am now, because during this time my parents left the island. So you had people coming out west, and they would get jobs. The ideal situation for a lot of families was if they could get seasonal work, so they could come out west in like the spring, summer, and fall, and then go home for the winter. Other situations where they find camp jobs where they'd go for 2 weeks and then come home for 2 weeks and then go for 2 weeks. So that's what's happening to the Connors. The way that they're doing it for now, since they don't want to disrupt the lives of their children, if it's at all possible, is the mom's going for 2 weeks, and then when she comes back for her 2 weeks home, the dad goes and he does his 2 weeks. So they're constantly just switching off, and they're hardly seeing each other anymore. But it's what seems like the best thing to do for now. So then like I said, they live in a very small fishing village, and a lot of the homes in this village are empty. A lot of people have left, and they've just kind of left everything. In some instances, even the car in the driveway, and they've packed up what they could and they've left. So Finn and Cora are kind of just in this town. There's no school because there's no people left to run it. Finn takes accordion lessons from an old lady that lives across the bay. Her name is Miss Callahan. And I love this relationship between Finn and his accordion teacher. What he does is he gets in his little rowboat and he rows over to where she lives, and she teaches him. And at one point, Finn's sister Cora gives him a book full of traditional, Newfoundland songs, and he brings the book over to his teacher, and I love this line. And they're talking about homesick songs, because that's what a lot of the book comprises of. And she says, all songs are homesick songs. And he says, even the happy ones, and she says, especially the happy ones. And I just loved that little exchange between the two of them. She was always, throughout all of their exchanges together, she was imparting knowledge, and he was soaking it up and also teaching her, and so that goes back and forth until, of course, the times of the year when the waters would freeze and he wouldn't be able to make it over. But for the rest of the year, she taught him accordion. Other than that, Finn becomes obsessed with solving the mystery of where the fish have gone. Their little library has also kind of been abandoned, but Finn knows how to get in, and he checks his books out. And he wants to learn as much as he can. Cora keeps herself busy by sort of breaking and entering into the homes around the town that have been abandoned. And then she goes into them, and it's kind of her place where she can be alone. And then what she does is, for each house, she picks a country. And then she spends her time decorating and turning that house into that country. So one house will be Italy, and then one house will be Egypt, and just on and on throughout the village. Cut into this story. So we've got what's currently going on in 1993 with Finn and Cora. And we know that Aiden and Martha are working as hard as they can to be able to keep their lives as normal as they can. Because, as with anyone who has gone through it, they don't want to have to pack up their bags and officially say, we're leaving. That's such a big, they don't want to leave. And then cut throughout the story, we get to learn about Martha and Aiden and how they got to know each other when they were young children. And this part of the story reads to me kind of like a fairy tale. There's so much whimsy to it, and just the way it's so beautifully written, it reads kind of like a fairy tale. So how it goes is Martha had a bunch of sisters, I think 3 sisters, and when they were all quite young, like say the oldest is 19 and then they trickle down in age, their parents drowned. They were out in a boat, the boat sunk and they drowned. And but since one of them is 19, they're able to stay in the home and to kind of take care of each other. And they find ways to make money. Martha realizes that she's really good at netting. So she makes nets, and then she goes down to the waterfront and she sells them there to the fishermen. Because at this point in the story, the fish are still plentiful, because it's 30 or 40 years before. Aiden lives across the water, not far, in the town of Little Running. I think he lives in Little Running, and then she lives in Big Running, or he lives in Big Running and she lives in Little Running. That's one of the things I love about Newfoundland is the names of the towns there, and a town being called Big Running and then the neighboring one being called Little Running, not that out of the ordinary. Because, there's also places, there's one called Joe Bat's Arm, and then there's one called Joe Bat's Other Arm. And that's their official names. So anyway, Aiden at this point is a fisherman. He's in his, I think, late teens. And every night when he goes out in the boat, he sings. And he has this beautiful, beautiful singing voice. And one night, Martha hears him. And she goes down to the water and she brings her netting, and she thinks, I'm going to get away from it all for an hour or so and sit here and do this netting and listen to this voice. And she thinks it's a mermaid at first because she can tell the voice is so far away, but she can't see who's singing, and there's just this ethereal quality to it. Eventually they meet and she realizes that it's him who is doing the singing, and right away they're taken with each other. On Aiden's end, we learn that his father left him and his mother when he was very young. And then around the whole town, there's kind of this stigma attached, and everyone says all Connors are cheats. And they're saying this to him too. Like, at one point he goes to have a game of cards with friends, and they're all like, oh, why are you letting him play? We all know all Connors are cheats. And that's quite the intense stigma to attach to a child, you know, when they're that impressionable and their self-confidence is building. It's a cruel thing to say, and it's just constantly drilled into him. So he gets it in his mind that he's never going to fall in love. And we see him, before he meets Martha officially, we see him with a neighborhood girl, and she's fancying him a bit. And, he thinks she's cute, but he's like, no, I can't ever fall in love. So they go out together in the woods, and she tries to kiss him, and he's like, I can't fall in love with you, so don't kiss me. And she's like, I don't want you to fall in love with me. I just, we're just having fun. And so eventually he does let her kiss him, and he doesn't fall in love with her. But once he meets Martha, he's terrified because, as he's been told his whole life, all Connors are cheats, and he doesn't want to make someone suffer with that the way his mother suffered when his father left. But sometimes when you meet that right person, doesn't matter what your intentions were to not fall in love, you can't help it, right? Once it happens, it happens. And they have a beautiful story, and they really get to know each other at one point because one of Martha's sisters falls ill, and at first they just think it's a cold, so they don't really make too much of it, but eventually she just keeps getting sicker and sicker until eventually the doctor is called, and the doctor does a home visit, and the doctor's kind of like, you should not have waited this long to call me. And they take her to the city, and then a few days later they want to go and visit her, so Aiden volunteers to take them in his boat, and he says that I'll take you and one of your sisters, because the other sister, she's married and gone. So he's like, I'll take you and your sister, and we'll row to St. John's, and we'll visit her in the hospital and see how she's doing. And it's kind of during that trip that they really solidify their bond. And all of those flashback scenes are just so beautifully written. The whole book is, but those scenes in particular, I almost wish the whole book was just them, only because I loved reading that story, and I hated when we get interrupted to go back to the present. Which, again, not to say that the present story wasn't just as interesting, but for this book in particular, I'm not really going to get into spoilers because there isn't really any. But I'm not going to get into the ending of the book just because we'd be here forever, and I feel like this is a book that you need to experience to really get to understand how beautiful it is. Because there's no real big twist. There's no big twist ending, It lays bare the story and tells it to you, and then there's an ending. Then the ending is definitive, and something happens, but it's nothing dramatic. So if you love stories about places that are different and people that are different, I think you would love this story. Like I said, it's a beautiful tale that sort of shows a portrait of a family that were going through it when the moratorium in Newfoundland hit. And it's fun getting to spend time with these people. Finn is an absolute delight. His sister Cora is going through all kinds of things, and then the mom and dad, they also kind of have to come face to face with who they are as people when they're apart, and I always find that so interesting. And it's a beautiful story, and I wouldn't say, if I was going to recommend to you my favorite book that takes place in Newfoundland, it would not, this wouldn't be the one. And I think maybe I will do a video on that one day if you want a story that really encapsulates everything about Newfoundland. And I know exactly what one I'm going to talk about. We'll do that in the new year as well. But this was a beautiful one, and it gives you a bit of history, and it's very true. It feels very authentic. I was interested to learn when I read about the author that Emma is not from Newfoundland herself. She's actually from Alberta, but from what I could tell online, she had visited there and had some friends who shared a lot of their experiences and whatnot with her. So I think that's really cool. All the other books about Newfoundland that I love are written by Newfoundlanders. So it was kind of cool to have kind of an outsider jump in and be able to experience that. So yeah, that was our Homesick Songs by Emma Hooper. I really enjoyed it. I would recommend. And yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait to talk about next week's book as well, you guys. And then after that, we're jumping into the Christmas stories. Currently got 4 Christmas books that I can't wait to start reading. Well, 3 I can't wait to start reading. 1 I've already read. And I can't wait to talk about it. So yes. Anyway, you guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. It is cold and snowy here, so I think I'm gonna have a nice cozy weekend in. I'll see you on Monday, guys. Bye.